to today's webinar. Absolutely fantastic for everybody to be here. We've had a great response for what is the first in this series, this collaboration between the Football Transfer Forum and the European Football Agents Association. With the first one, I should have started off by saying Guten Tag, really, Tony, shouldn't I? But I'm gonna limit myself on the use of my German language today. Yeah, with the first one being Doing Business in Germany, a how-to guide for agents. So we are really, really excited. There's a couple of guys I want to introduce to everybody first. But before I do that, I just want to make sure that everybody can hear and see us loud and clear. So if you guys could just put a couple of comments for those guys tuning in today to the webinar, just in the chat box, just to let us know that you can hear us. Just as another point of order, as the webinar goes on today, if you think of any questions or you want to raise a point, please feel free to pop it either in the chat box or in the question and answer box, and I will get through as many of them as possible. My name is Ryan McKnight. I have been working in UK football for approaching 20 years now, and Tony and I have collaborated on a number of projects within the game over the past few years. I want to introduce next Tony Sharkey, founder of the Football Transfer Forum. Tony, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Nice to see you guys. I'm based up in Newcastle, so weather's here's good. Yeah, I mean, just a little bit before we start, it's great to be co-hosting this webinar with the European Football Agents Association. A little bit about the Football Transfer Forum, though. We've been going about 4.5 years, and we do live events and online events. And our audience is football agents, people in the recruitment side of the football business, so sporting directors, chief scouts, and also companies that are active in that space. So anybody who's got a hand in a transfer is our audience. And what we like to do at the Football Transfer Forum is to provide some insight and a little bit of networking for you guys. So hopefully you'll enjoy today's webinar. It's the first one of a series, and hopefully you'll enjoy it today.
Thank you, Tony. And next, really excited to bring in Roberto Branco Martins from the European Football Agents Association. Good morning, Roberto. How are you?
Good morning, Ryan. Thank you very much. I'm fine, and I'm very happy to see this becoming all concrete now. You know, we had numerous talks. It's always nice to create some energy with spirits that think alike. So that's always good. And I'm really very proud of the fact that we're able to kick off today with this first one in the series, and hopefully a very successful series. And it seems that the first edition is already, let's hope, a good sign for the ones to come. So let me close the door here. It's a little bit noisy.
Oh, no problems. Whilst Roberto is closing the door, I'll bring in to the two other guys that you can see on your screen. We're really lucky and proud to have Ilja Kaenzig, Chief Exec MD from Bochum in the German Bundesliga 2. Morning, Ilja. How are you?
Yeah, good morning. Guten Morgen. Thank you for having me, and it's not only a pleasure, it's an honor to be alongside this conference with people like Gregor and Roberto, whom I know for a very long time. So thank you very much.
Oh, fantastic. We're going to be hearing more from Ilja a little bit later. And also Dr. Gregor Reiter. Morning, Gregor.
Good morning, Ryan. Good morning, everybody. Guten Morgen aus Dortmund.
Fantastic. Tony, that was good morning. That's what Gregor said there.
That's beyond me. You know, my language skills. I was watching Champions League last night, and the German sides had decent results. That's all I know. So,
unfortunately, the club from Dortmund lost on Tuesday against Lazio Rome. But
yeah.
And we're going to be hearing in detail from Gregor very, very shortly. But just coming back to Roberto, Roberto, can you give the guys listening in today a sense of what the European Football Agents Association is all about, and you know, just you know, what are the pertinent things that you're up to at the moment?
Well, what's all about? Basically, we started out with the European Football Agents Association, and we have to say that we're the founding members, the following countries: Germany, so I've known Gregor for quite a while already now, the Netherlands, of course, Italy, France, and Spain were involved in the first talks, and that's already I think 13 years ago. The EFAA consists of national football agents associations, so we don't have individual members. We represent the members via the national associations, because otherwise, you know, it's a can of worms to be able to structure around the 1,500 agents that we already represent nowadays. We are now present in 15 or 16 countries. A lot of them are European countries, but we also have associated members in Brazil, Argentina, Australia, Japan. Morocco has joined recently, Nigeria, of course. So we kind of have almost a worldwide span. What have we been doing? Obviously creating this collective voice for agents. From a practical perspective, this leads to better collaboration between agents themselves. So on the one hand, EFAA can serve as a sort of a service organization, a platform where agents can find each other, and well, business-wise, that's interesting. But I think the more important approach that we always had is that EFAA is a political platform, and that for the first time, we have created this channeled voice for agents, and where we defend and fight for the interests of agents. In our perspective, agents are of course part of the football family, but on the other hand, they are also very much connected to general business, general consultancy, headhunters maybe, search and selection companies. We have been identified by FIFA as intermediaries, so we have a role in the football world. So this means that on the one hand, we are part of the football family, but on the other hand, general laws and rules are also applicable to this profession. So I think that all the people present today sense that friction now and then, especially when an organization like FIFA, from the perspective as being the global regulatory body in professional football, or in football in general, professional football too, imposes rules and regulation on a profession that is not 100% football specific. So we all know it's quite difficult to, you know, have the necessity to register in one country and apply the rules in that specific country, and then apply rules in another country if you move a player to, let's say, the Netherlands or Germany, whatever. And that's all because of the fact that there's now a big necessity for more harmonization in those international rules. FIFA has taken up the initiative to regulate agents, but they've also let us go our own way from 2015 onwards.
Yeah.
So that's problematic. Well, to make a long story short, it's necessary now more than ever to have a channeled voice to speak to mainly FIFA in order to create some clarity in the rules. What are we doing now? Now we are putting pressure on FIFA. We are setting our foot down as stakeholder in the implementation of the new regulations that we expect to enter into force somewhere at the end of 2021. But up until then, so that's what we do. Don't think that is the right platform now to discuss that, because we're focusing on Germany. But until then, what is one certainty is that we are still confronted as intermediaries with all the different regulations in the different nations. So I think that was the source of the initiative for this. It was the source for this initiative.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, let's get back on and let's see what we're going to be up to today. So this is what the agenda is looking like. After I finish this a little bit, we're going to get in to the real nitty gritty of dealing and operating in Germany with Dr. Gregor Reiter, legal counsel at the European Football Agents Association. And then next, what we're going to have about 11:10 is we're going to have a very, very short briefing from Eduardo Llorente, who works for an insurance company that deals with football clubs and football players in Germany. About 11:15, I'm going to be speaking to Ilja and really hearing in terms of from the coalface from a club perspective, what is it that agents need to know about dealing with clubs in Germany, and also what are German clubs' strategies in terms of dealing with agents and also player recruitment as well. Then we're going to open it up to everybody on the panel, and we're going to invite your questions as well. And we should hopefully, if I've done my job properly, all get finished off at about 12 o'clock your time. We're an hour behind. So let's proceed. So Gregor, welcome to the webinar. Just very, very briefly, if you could just tell everybody listening in a little bit about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Certainly will. Well, name is Gregor Reiter. I'm a German-based attorney with a law firm being based in Dortmund, Germany. I was educated at the University of Bochum, so I have not only I have a connection to VfL Bochum because I know Ilja very well, but also because I went to school there. I also went to school at the University of Oregon in the United States, where I studied political science. And then I returned to Bochum to write my PhD in sports law. That's how I met Roberto 15 years ago in Berlin. And he drew me into the dark side of sports law, into the agent business. I helped set up the German Football Agents Association in 2007. I have been their CEO ever since. I was privileged to join the EFAA as a legal counsel, and I have worked alongside German agents, but also alongside a lot of agents from abroad, and Roberto for many, many years, in order to advance the cause of the agents, not only towards the associations, towards the football associations, excuse my English there, but also towards the politics and so on and so forth.
Brilliant.
Beside that, I also do do a lot of insolvency law and sports insolvency. Those are my two main things.
Excellent. But today we're going to mine your knowledge about the real detail and legal frameworks around operating in Germany as an agency, and some of the legal considerations as well. And Gregor, you're basically going to try and identify potential traps and then solutions to them.
Exactly. Yes.
Excellent. Right. Well, let's roll on. So the first one, Gregor, employment contracts. Talk to us about employment contracts in Germany.
Well, first, what you need to know is that a football player under German law is an employee, just like every other employee, whether you work for a bank or the post office, same thing. There are, however, two differences to quote unquote normal employees that you have to keep in mind. Usually a football player, at least if he plays in the first or second Bundesliga, gets paid more than the average employee. And secondly, as the German Federal Labor Court stated a couple of years ago in the now famous Heinz Müller case in Germany, as a football player, you have to undergo special restrictions that a usual employee does not have to undergo. The main restriction in this case is that your contract can be time limited, and that an ordinary termination clause can be banned from the contract, and that can, for a normal employee, be only done for a maximum period of 2 years, but for a football player it can be done over his entire career. So we're looking at about 15 years in average here.
Yeah. And so, sorry, Gregor, just to come in there. Obviously, a lot of sort of British-based agents on the webinar today, and it's quite easy for us to make the presumption that wherever their player goes onto the continent, that they're going to be an employee. But of course, in places like the Czech Republic, they're not. They're classed almost as like a sole trader. So it's worth just checking that out, isn't it, in terms of how they will be treated as a worker.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, they are employees. So all the laws that protect employees in Germany are true for football players as well. There are some specialties that have been pointed out by the courts lately in regarding termination, regarding vacation times, and so on and so forth, regarding the fact what you have to wear, the fact what you can say, on the off the pitch or even outside of practices. What an employer or football club is considered in Germany is a tendency employer. That's a Tendenzarbeitgeber. That's how we call them. Kind of like same as the churches. For example, if you work for the Catholic Church in Germany and you get divorced, they can terminate your contract immediately, which I couldn't do. If one of my secretaries would get divorced, well, that's not my issue. But if you're a tendency employer, football club is a tendency employer, then you have special rights.
Gregor, is your secretary getting divorced?
No, not that I know.
No. Okay. I just wanted to check that. So the traps within obviously within the contracts that and the payments to players, what traps can people fall victim to here?
Well, first, what you need to understand if you come from outside of Germany is that the way players paid in Germany can be a little bit confusing or complicated. Excuse me. First of all, he gets his usual annual salary. Unlike the British, we don't calculate salaries on a weekly basis, but it's a monthly or annual salary, how we do it. And on top of that, again, unlike England or Great Britain, we know a lot of bonuses that are being paid to the player. And on the slide, you see a few examples of bonuses per point, appearance bonuses, title bonus, loyalty bonuses, certain salary raises after the player meets certain criteria, i.e., has played in certain games, has scored so many goals, whatsoever. So there's, besides the actual salary that you receive calculated on a monthly or annual basis, you receive a lot of bonuses, and we'll get to that a little bit later on, because that's another uniqueness of Germany where it gets complicated. One thing that is very, very important in Germany, and that especially the viewers from the United Kingdom do not know, is the German Entgeltfortzahlungsgesetz, or the injury payment law, because that says that after 6 weeks of injury, or for 6 weeks of injury, the employee will receive his regular payment, from the employer. However, if that's 6 weeks, or what's called the continuous payment term, has expired, the employee will not receive money from the employer anymore. The employer does not have to pay him anymore, but the employee will receive money from his or her health insurance rather than from the employer. And well, that's obviously the good news, but there is a downside to that.
Yeah. Just before we continue there, I just want to bring Tony in on that. Tony, I can imagine there's a few gasps from some of the agents that are tuning in today at the prospect of that. Of course, that's just something that, again, that we're just not used to here.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Ryan. I mean, 6 weeks, so really that's a hamstring. And then after 6 weeks, you would go down to so I'm presuming then, Gregor, that everyone has to take out some sort of injury insurance to cover them after the 6 weeks, particularly, the highly paid players in the Bundesliga 1. Is the players that don't take out this insurance as well? Because it just seems to me that obviously in England, you would get paid for the full term of your contract unless it was a real career-ending injury. So what's the situation?
Right, Tony, it's almost like you've had sight of the slides. That's that was very, very sort of predictive. So let me get Gregor back into where he was in terms of his flow. And so there we have it in black and white, Gregor. It's from a player that goes from quite a large salary, unless some appropriate action is taken, it can go down to something quite modest.
Right, exactly. The maximum injury payment that's being paid in Germany is 90% of your net income. So that actually sounds good when you're a football player. But obviously that 90% is topped off at the number that you see on the screen there, 2,877 euros net. So roughly 5,000 euros gross per month is what you will receive. And if you are a professional football player, either the first or the second Bundesliga, that is a major drop in your monthly income after just 6 weeks of injury, which is something that can occur quite often if you're a professional athlete, or more often than if you're a normal employee. For a normal employee, it's a very long time period, but for a professional athlete, this time period can be very, very short. So you have to consider, what do I do after 6 weeks in order to maintain a stable income?
And you've obviously addressed this point. So there's sort of two principal ways that people can not find themselves in this situation.
Yeah, there's two ways that you can handle this. First of all, what Tony just pointed out, you can take out an insurance that covers the gap between the injury payment and the net payment the player needs. So you, as an agent, you would have to figure out what is it that the player actually needs on a monthly basis, and then you calculate on that. You would have to take out the injury payment, which, just to make things a little bit confusing for everybody, injury payments in Germany are calculated on a daily basis. So, you know, we calculate salary on a monthly basis, but injury payment on the daily basis. Don't ask me why we do that. The downside to the insurance thing is the premiums are really high. You're looking at around 100,000 euros per year, depending on the age of the player, and obviously depending on the sum that the player wants to secure. Now, the second thing that players and clubs agree to is a loyalty bonus, which will be paid independently of the player being injured or not, and will only depend on the contract, the employment contract, being in place on the due date. What you can also do, but that's done very rarely, you can try to negotiate a lengthening of the payment period. So the employer can agree, instead of paying 6 weeks, to pay 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. But that's something most employers, in at least the ones that I have encountered, I actually only know of one that actually would do that. Most clubs decline that, say we're not going to get into that. So
okay, why don't we ask an employer? Ilya, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. What's your stance at Bochum? Is it the 6 weeks, or for a very special player, would you extend that out?
No, we are quite strict. I think our colleagues are the same, and I would Gregor might disagree, but I think in the higher salary categories of the first Bundesliga, it's up to the players to take care of that problem, if you want. And for clubs, it makes it also easier not to have this special agreement, so to have these compensations with the constructual models, because they include, let's say, the money they save after 6 weeks when they calculate the wage budgets over the year. So gives you some additional freedom to act if necessary, because you always have players going beyond the 6 weeks. But it's in my opinion, it's up to the players to take care of that matter, and their agents, of course.
Thank you, Ilya. Yeah, really. I mean, it's like I say, it's such a sort of foreign concept to us, you know. Obviously, here in England, you know, if you're a bad injury, say Van Dijk at the moment, he's going to obviously be out for a long time. He won't be seeing any reduction in his base salary. So really interesting.
It is something to keep in mind when you come from outside of Germany, because clubs tend to forget to tell you this.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And again, you know, we've seen a little bit of this in the UK when things go wrong and people fall out.
If I may interrupt, because I thought I saw that there was a question popping up.
Sorry, let me just
that refers to the loyalty bonus, I think.
Okay, yeah, no problem. After what length of time does it take to qualify for a loyalty bonus?
Yeah, well, that basically depends on your agreement with the club. The loyalty bonus is nothing that is legally that is made up by the law. It's something that you agree to with the club. You say, I want X amount of the payment to be paid regardless of the player being injured or not. and then of course he would qualify immediately. The only prerequisite would be the fact that he's still under contract with the club.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Just moving on to the next one then, in terms of just people's basic right to be employed and the interpretation of that in Germany. So what does it mean to be an employed footballer in Germany?
Well, every employee in Germany has the right to be employed. That means he has the right to be given work. So not just being paid, but you actually have to let him work. Now, obviously, with a professional athlete, that could not contain the fact that he has the right, or with a professional football player, that cannot contain the right that he has the right to play, because there's only 11 on the pitch. But it does contain the right to participate in practice. And now that has been tested in the past by clubs. They have tried to define, now what does it mean to participate in practice? Is it enough for us to send the player running around the pitch? Is that practice? And the most famous case of that was the Trainings Group 2 that was established in 2017 by the German club Hoffenheim, basically taking their players, some players that they didn't want anymore, taking them out of the first team and giving them a special training group. And it was a special coach that say, here you go, and you practice by yourself, and you practice by yourself, and then we are done with our obligation towards the employee. That is obviously not legal.
Yeah.
Gregor, it's interesting that in England we've just had the 25-man squad submitted for the Premier League, and Arsenal have not put Mesut Ozil in that squad.
Yeah.
Does that happen in Germany as well?
Yeah, it could happen. You don't have a right as an employer to be integrated into the squad. You only have a right to practice under professional conditions.
Okay.
And there's a potential fascinating legal situation with the Ozil situation at Germany, because there's so much rumor and conjecture about the actual reasons for his omission from the squad. Is it to do with commercial deals in China and his stance on the Chinese government's position against Muslims in the country, for example? Can you see that brewing, Gregor, into something that spills over into a dispute?
Well, I mean, I can only argue, obviously, from a German legal point of view, and from a German point of view, if the club lets him participate at practice on a professional level, which I assume Arsenal does, then there will be little room for the player to do anything against them legally. I mean, we can only speculate on the reasons behind the move that Arsenal did, but from a legal point of view, unless it would be something where they punish him for something else that he did, that might be a different story. If what you just said is in fact true, then he might have a leverage on going to the court. But what he would obtain in Germany is a German court will probably tell you, listen, this employment relationship is ruined. How about we just dissolve it? Arsenal pays and you leave. That's how we would handle it in Germany.
The other rumor is because he's currently funding the mascot's wages of Arsenal. The rumor is that he's just going to take on that role as mascot, but I bet it's just a rumor. It's just a rumor, Gregor. So moving forward, this slide here, talk to us about that.
Yeah, what picking up on the Trainings Group 2, what the club obviously can do is they can move you from the first team to the second team.
Yeah.
And based on the experience that the German Football League has had with Hoffenheim a few years ago, what it says now in the contract is that the player can be moved from team 1 to team 2 under these three conditions you see on the screen. That means the second team has to at least participate in either League 4 or League 5 if the first team is playing in the second Bundesliga. The coach of the second team has to at least possess the football coach license or an A license, again, if the first team plays in the second Bundesliga. And that's very, very important, because that's not what was done in the training script too. The practice is held in team strength. So the court recognizes, and the DFL recognizes, that obviously practice for a football player means I have to be able to practice with a team. Now, it's not enough to go running in the woods, but I have to be able to practice with in team strength.
Yeah, there's plenty of English coaches that like to go running in the woods. So for players coming here, you might need to consider that. And then if the player was banned from practice?
Well, that's sometimes used by clubs to try to discipline players. What happens if you're banned from practice? You need to keep in mind that in Germany, you can change a contract by simply acting in a certain way or not acting in a certain way. So if your player is banned from participating in practice, the first thing you need to do is you need to object to that immediately. You need to tell the club, well, it's not lawful. I want to participate in practice. Because if he doesn't do that, or either consents or does nothing, then the ban becomes effective. And once you have objected, immediately go seek legal assistance, and then a specialized labor law lawyer will tell you whether or not the ban was rightfully done or not.
Okay, and then if things get really bad, and an agent finds that his player and his contract is being terminated, what's the situation there?
Yeah, I mean, what we have in Germany, as I pointed out earlier, the employment contract forbids to terminate ordinary, but obviously it can't forbid to terminate the contract for extraordinary reasons. And what happens in a case like that is because the player is an employee, he falls under the Termination Protection Act or the Kündigungsschutzgesetz. And in that Termination Protection Act says, if you do not act against a termination within 3 weeks, i.e. if you don't go to court within 3 weeks after having received that termination, the termination becomes valid, no matter what. No, it does not matter. No matter how illegal it was, if you miss that deadline, the termination becomes valid. So in case this happens, and actually it does happen, I must say in lower leagues more often than in higher leagues. The most prominent example from last summer is Kevin Grosskreutz, who was on the 2014 German national team squad that won the World Cup. He was laid off by his club in the third league, and this is now pending in court, because you really, really need to be aware of that. If that happens to you or to your player, then you need to act immediately.
Excellent. And then in terms of this term of preclusion, why is that so important?
Okay, what we have, and you all know terms of limitation terms, so that you cannot enforce a claim after a certain period of time. And what the German government is very keen on, the German government wants stability and peace and quiet in the work relationship. So they came up with this term of preclusion, which is very unique to the working world in Germany, saying that a claim between an employer and an employee does not fall under the usual limitation period, which is 3 years in Germany, but falls under, or can fall under, term of preclusion, which is much shorter. In the case of the DFL template, it's 3 months, but it can be shorter. It can be only 6 weeks. And what you need to do, especially keeping in mind that we have a very complicated bonus structure in a German contract, the player needs to check his payslip and say, well, if I'm missing some money here, he again needs to act immediately, because if he doesn't act, he will lose the claim.
Yeah. So in terms of what people and agents and players, they need to do?
Well, as an agent, you need to make the player aware of that term of preclusion, where it can be found in the contract, and that there is such a thing. And then whenever the player receives his payslip, he needs to check that payslip, especially for bonus payments, if everything is being paid, or if he thinks he's missing something. And if he thinks he's missing something, then the club needs to be notified immediately in order to not lose the claim after the term of preclusion.
My payslip from Tony always misses a 0 at the end.
We'll have to do something about that.
Yeah, we'll have to do something. Yeah. So, Gregor, moving on now to intermediary agreements, and you've been quite forceful here. There's some lethal clauses, as you refer to. let's get into that. How are they usually paid? How is that different to what's going on in England?
Well, I mean, similar to England, it's probably that one of the reference figure, or the intermediary is being paid a percentage of the player's salary. Usually, there are different structures, but mostly he's being paid a percentage of the player's salary. And one reference figure is the gross annual salary, which is not that hard to figure out. And the other, sometimes the player also receives a certain percentage from the bonuses that are being paid to or the agent receives a certain percentage from the bonuses being paid to the player. That makes it obviously a little bit more difficult to figure out what I'm actually being paid. These payments are usually made twice a year and after the closure of the transfer window, and they will mostly depend on the player still being under contract with the club that that's obliged to pay.
Okay. And the unaltered employment contract obviously sort of cements this.
Yeah. Well, what you will sometimes find in an intermediary agreement is that the club points out you will only get paid, dear agent, if the employment contract, if the player is still under employment and if the employment contract is unaltered. Now, what is meant by that is if, let's say you sign a contract for 5 years with the club, after 3 years the player goes the player goes to another agent, and the other agent, for example, extends the contract for 1 year. Then the club will say, based on this clause, well, the employment contract is not unaltered anymore because it has been extended, and thus the original agent, although he has done his work, you will not get paid. We will only pay the new agent. So you have to look out for these clauses in the intermediate agreement, because you have done your work, you have negotiated a 5-year deal, so you should get paid for 5 years. Yeah.
And so people should be looking to really cancel that clause as you suggest there as well.
Cancel it.
And then the sort of the mediated employment contract, there is an opportunity to have a variation on it then.
Well, it's the same thing. Sometimes they use the word mediate, vermittelt in German instead of unverändert, but it basically means the same thing. So do look out for these clauses, which can be found under the conditions. Usually first says what you get paid, and then below that you will find under what conditions you are being paid, and that's where you will find these clauses.
Yeah. Now, this next one, again, will make some agents in the UK shudder. Clubs trying to pass on the risk of injury of the player to the intermediary.
Yeah, well, it's there's several ways of trying to do this. Some intentionally, others are probably more unintentionally being done. Remember the injury payment. After 6 weeks, the player does not get paid by the club anymore. So if in the intermediary agreement, you will find something that says the fee of the intermediary is calculated based on the actual paid salary you're in, because the club won't pay anymore. Then you also sometimes find clauses saying the club only needs to pay if the player still holds a playing license. Now you need to understand that sometimes clubs, especially in lengthy injuries, will revoke the playing license, will give it back to the DFL. In that case, if you have something like that in your clause, you will not get paid because the player does not have a playing license anymore. Now these clauses are not fair, because the injury risk does not lay with the intermediary, but with the club. You as an intermediary, you've done your job, you've brought the player to the club. So if the player is injured, it's the problem of the club. If you're a headhunter and you bring a doctor to a hospital and he gets sick, you still get paid. It's not your problem.
Yeah.
So be aware of this.
Yeah, just on to the last couple of slides now. In terms of some of the liability issues that intermediaries need to consider, there's a couple of important points there.
Yeah, what's there is sometimes, obviously, if you breach your contract, you are liable for that breach. That is being governed under paragraph 276 of the German Civil Code, and that is totally sufficient. You don't need any extra in the contract. What clubs sometimes will try to do is they will introduce indemnity clauses, and the downside of an indemnity clause is under German law, if the club is being faced with a claim, he can simply turn around and tell the agent, well, you have to indemnify me, so please pay. And then the agent finds himself in an uphill battle where he has to take the club to court if he wants to say that the indemnity was not triggered. So all of a sudden you're in the act, you have to become active. And sometimes these clauses are even broadened to include claims made by tax authorities or other governmental branches. These are especially dangerous because the tax situation of German agents has somewhat been cleared by several court rulings, but there's still some things that are in the dust. So you want to step away from these clauses. You want to make sure that you're not being held liable above what the German law actually holds you liable for. That is sufficient.
And then finally, Gregor, everybody's favorite subject, VAT. The VAT between Britain and Germany. We've had a bit of a change to our VAT rates, and then we've had some changes of our VAT rates depending on industry as well. And of course, any variant on VAT causes some fluctuations throughout all countries, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, what you have to understand here, usually inside the European Union, VAT should be issued. It should be handled the same. Actually, HMRC has already Brexited on this particular issue. What the German courts have said, the German tax courts have said, that the VAT that an agent charges to a club the club can deduct from as a paid VAT, because the club or the agents render services to the club regardless of the agent also representing the player. That doesn't matter from a German point of view. However, and that should be applicable in Great Britain as well, because you are still a member of the European Union. However, HMRC is of the opinion that the agent always also offers services to the player. So part of in part, HMRC does not accept the reverse charge mechanism that you will bill as an agent coming from abroad, and it will actually deduct VAT inside Great Britain from the money you receive from the German club. The downside of that is you will not be able to retain that from the German club, because the German fiscal authorities force you to charge reversely, and if a club would accept openly VAT, the club could not get that VAT back from their tax authorities. So that's something that you have to look out for. And if you are in that position, you basically, what you have to do is you have to tell, listen, I want 20,000 pounds, euros extra for my VAT.
Yeah, fantastic. Absolutely fascinating and very, very detailed, Gregor. Really appreciate that. There was just one question that I did want to answer. What is the registration process for people wanting to register as an agent in Germany, and what are the requirements?
Well, it should be very simple, but it isn't. I'll tell you in a second why it isn't. Basically, what you need to fill out is the pre-registrations form. You have to sign on the intermediary declaration. You have to turn in a certificate of good conduct, which cannot be older than 6 months, and you have to pay 500 euros per month, and then you're registered for 1 year in Germany, and you have to repeat that process every single year. That's basically it. Simply send it via email to the German Football Association, and then please don't wonder that it takes 4 or 5 months for them to return to you or send you an invoice, because unlike with the FA, where you can simply do it online, we're not that technically advanced yet. In Germany, it's still being sent to the DFB, and for whatever reason, there is nobody at the Football Association that is responsible for agents. If somebody does it kind of like on a halfway job. And just, yes, to answer that question, what are the costs? 500 euros per year. That is the registration fee in Germany.
Fantastic. Gregor, thank you so much for that. That was extremely detailed. Just for everybody that's listening in, all of that PowerPoint is going to be sent to you tomorrow as part of some feedback that we'll send out as well. So you'll get all of that detail. Tony, would you just like to introduce Eduardo into the next section?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, Eduardo Llorente, you're head of sports, aren't you, at HDI, Eduardo? How's things with you?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Ryan, Tony, thank you for the opportunity to be present at this day.
Just tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
Yes, of course. Our company, it's called HDI Global Specialty, and we are a joint venture between HDI Global and Hannover Re. And my team came from Hannover Re, and we treat the last 15, 16 years just with sports. I met also Mr. Gregor Reiter. Hello. It's a few years ago. I was present at the meeting there in Germany.
So Eduardo,
and yes,
Eduardo, you've got the answer, the solution to this problem where there's a 6 weeks injury. You know, if you've got an injury longer than 6 weeks, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, of course. I was late in now, and therefore I'm not aware what you have talking about before.
We've covered the clauses. Gregor's kindly taken us through the problem. What's the solution? Is it, you know, what's your insurance? How does it work then? How do you do that?
Yes, usually in Germany, after 6 weeks of illness, the German social security system take over to pay out the salary, but they are limited. And I don't know what the exactly figure is, but it's around about 2,000 euro per month, and that's far away from a usual professional football player salary. So after 6 weeks, you have a big gap in your income, and that affects also your life quality regarding demands of certain products. And that's the reason why we've got a product which covers this temporary total disablement beginning up from the 43rd day. And we pay out the salary. It's calculated on a daily basis.
Yeah.
We pay out monthly, and we pay it out until 1 year or 2 years, depending from the time.
So Eduardo, do you think all the players and all the agents need this insurance in the Bundesliga 1 and the Bundesliga 2? Is that the norm? Everyone just gets it?
No, it's not the norm, because it's not everybody is aware that this kind of insurance product exists. And also the well-known players, they are an exception because they've got a clause in their contracts that the club continues to pay the salary. But a lot of normal common Bundesliga players don't have this this clause. So there's a risk, certain risk to lose the income in case of rupture of ligaments, of a fracture of the bones. It takes you out for half a year, 1 year.
Yeah, exactly.
But most of the players think that the only market to offer this kind of product is London. And a lot of most of the wordings, legislation, everything is in London, and they don't know that they can get this cover also in Germany with the German wording, with German legislation, and not only Germany, where we've got this product in Spanish, French, Italian, in all parts of the European country, or in all European nations, we can offer this product in their own native language, because it's it's normal that you feel more comfortable if you have this contract because in your own language. For me, as I'm Spanish, but I was born in Germany and growing up in Germany, so German is my mother language, to say it like this. But even this, if I read a German lawyer document, I have to read it 3 or 4 times to know what is there, what content.
So Eduardo, you've kindly provided. We've got quite a lengthy document that we can share with all our attendees after the after this webinar. We'll just put up your contact details if we could.
Yeah,
and
no
obviously
problem.
the guys on the webinar know where to come if they need the insurance. And just tell us, have you got some of the big clubs, the big players? Is there anyone you can let us know?
Yes, of course, of course. For example, one of our biggest clients was the FIFA.
Oh, wow.
Yes, they had a problem, and
It's
everybody
Germany, any good German clients, yeah?
Okay, a German client, yes. Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, VfL Wolfsburg, 1. FC Köln. These are the clubs. But we've got also, I will mention some players who don't play anymore. For example, we insured also Kaká in the past, Luis Figo.
Oh, wow.
This is a very small niche market. And so we receive inquiries from all over the world regarding the most popular sports. And our core business is really European football. So we see every big player and every big club, we've got it on our desk. And so we have a lot of figures and data from the past to calculate the probability of an injury very well.
Okay, thanks so much, Eduardo. I'll hand back over to Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you, Eduardo. And it goes without saying that it goes without saying that if you get Bochum as as a client in the next few weeks, then Tony and I are on some commission as well.
Who?
Don't worry about it, Eduardo. Don't worry about it, Eduardo.
Don't worry.
We're going to get you in at Bochum.
Which player?
We're going to get you in at Bochum. We're going to get you in at Bochum. Yeah, Bochum.
Ah, okay.
Thank you.
Right,
Thank you, Eduardo. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Eduardo. Yes, so let's move on. And now we're gonna speak to Ilja. Ilja, can we just unmute Ilja?
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Excellent, excellent. I've chosen a lovely picture of you there, Ilja. Can you remember that being taken?
It must have been a long time ago because the gray is not the hair is not gray yet.
Google's been kind there. Google's been kind. So listen, Ilja, thank you so much for your time this morning. It's great to have you with us. I think first of all, I want to ask you, how's it going at Bochum?
Oh, not so well. We should have had a better start into the season with a quite easy program, but we wasted the games, and now we are, as every year, under pressure to win because the club remains ambitious, and of course their goal is to get back to the Bundesliga, where the club belongs and where it has traditionally been for a long period of time in its history. So that is a big task, and beside that, of course, we are fighting with the virus and the dynamic situation. So changing our hygiene concepts and concepts for the matches all the time. So it's very precise, but it's very tiresome.
Very good, very good. Well, good luck with all of that.
Thank you.
We had a chat last week, and we've prepared some points that we're gonna go through. And for the guys tuning in, what we're looking to achieve here is really get a real sense of, if you're thinking of going and trying to approach Bochum, trying to take a player to a club like Bochum or another German club, what are the cultures at that club? What are the processes? What are the things that you need to consider? And what's life going to be like for your player as well? So let's start off with scouting, Ilja. From your perspective, at Bochum and the vast majority of German clubs, what are the strategies?
Well, the market is focusing on very few selected markets. You have from the top 5 leagues, it's mainly France, almost a bit traditionally, and now just recently the UK. And besides that, there's very few exporting countries like the Netherlands, Switzerland, Austria, Belgium, which are providing players. And outside Europe, actually, it's more or less only 2 to 3 leagues. Some American players, of course, especially young players, are in the focus. And apart from that, Japan and Korea, those are hot markets for German football. This narrow field of activity, I mean, this results from, let's say, the difficulty to integrate players from most other championships. Because the goal is to take the player immediately into the first team, to have him playing on a good level, and to adapt culturally very fast. And this also means to adapt to the high expectations of professionalism in German football. And
yeah,
so
just on that, Ilja, because that's, for me, it's a really interesting point. How do you sort of define the sort of differences, say, for an English player coming to a German club in terms of those levels of professionalism? How do they manifest? How do they come about?
Well, first of all, it's a conservative country, so maybe it's also plays a role in the definition of professionalism. Then, of course, you have less languages spoken. I mean, even in France or Italy, football gets very international. Everybody speaks English. That's not the case in Germany. It gets better, so to say, but the language in the dressing room still is German. So it's not easy to adapt to that. And I think also the discipline plays a huge role. And but it can help players. We actually had last season a young talent from Arsenal, player called Jody Ose Tutu, and he struggled at the beginning. He struggled with the way training was executed, the preparation of matches. There was not maybe so much laughter. And also that he had to do all the stuff off the pitch by himself, to open a bank account, or he had some support, but he was on his own. But after he went through this bumpy period, actually he performed extremely well, and he developed in a player with a great market.
And Ilja, can you? What's the situation with non-EU players in Germany? Can you take them? How does it work?
Well, I think Belgium is also quite open, but Germany is totally open. There are no restrictions. There are no foreigner rules, so to say. So you can field as many as you want, and clubs take advantage of that, especially clubs from mid-table. They try to find players of good value abroad. Frankfurt is a great example. Maybe they are really scouting in markets where the big clubs, big German clubs, are maybe less active, and try to gain a competitive advantage from that. So the foreign rules are quite an advantage for German football, but that's the case since almost 20 years or 15 years, that there's total freedom in that regard.
Yeah, obviously we're conversing in English today, thank God. A friend of mine who was a really excellent ice hockey player, played for Canada nationally. He went to play in Germany, and he was saying to me, in terms of everyday life, there is this cultural expectation to go and learn the language. So as you say, if you're going shopping or you're at the bank, society really wants you to try and embrace the German language, and obviously for potentially young English players, that's a consideration for them and their agents, isn't it?
Well, I think the biggest difference was that the coaches now is a wave of young and upcoming coaches now taking charge in German football, but the old guard, they don't speak any language, and or any foreign language, and so that created maybe a distance between international players, and especially those with lesser status. It was difficult to impose themselves. It was a bit cold, maybe.
And then moving on to our second point, which is about the sort of organisation really around how players come in. And, you know, most German clubs operate in this notion of a squad planner rather than a chief scout. Can you provide some detail around that, please?
Well, it's a very specific organizational structure which has to be maybe kept in mind when dealing for the first time in German football. And the highest guy in sports is the managing director responsible for sports, as in most clubs. Together with him or just below him is a so-called Kaderplaner, a guy responsible for the squad planning, and there's also the guy who's keeping in contact with the agent world. So I think in Italy they called him Mercato man or whatever. In Germany, this position is often, or is nowadays often branded as sporting director, which is quite confusing. So you have a managing director sports, then you have a sporting director sitting on the bench on match days, and then below that you have the chief scout. So I just have to know that the sole decision maker is actually the managing director sports in any club, and all the other roles are, all the others are just supporting stuff. And so they cannot take decisions, and so it's important to build up relations with the right man in the hierarchy, and it can be confusing, as said. And maybe a point which is beneficial to mention is also the role of the coaches in the transfers. And in Germany it more resembles to the Italian model, I would say. You know, the coach he might have a veto right, but he's neither involved in the development of a transfer policy nor in the selection of players, and hardly these days coaches go out and watch players themselves. You know, they have to work with the squad put at their disposal by the managing director sports with his people. And I can tell you that this trend, in my opinion, Gregor might disagree, but the trend of up and coming young coaches further reinforces this balance of powers, you know, because these young coaches, they are chosen for their tactical, for their analytical skills, and they are less interested in all these dealings and in the transfer market and the player market. They just want to work with the players, with the good players available. Yeah. So these are interesting developments, actually, I think, and also good to keep in mind when dealing.
Yeah, and you know, not too far away from that, for agents and operators thinking about coming and working with German clubs, what should their expectations be in and around, not wages so much in terms of an individual wage, but really the structures around wages and how that fits into club finances?
Yeah, well, there's a strict wage budget discipline in German football, and this is more understandable when you look at the fact that clubs are members owned, and there are no investors to kick in or to spend beside that budget. So in German it's called the Lizenzetat, is really the total amount paid to players and coaches and staff members of the professional team, of the first team. And it's really a key figure. You know, you can really compare the strength of a club, the competitive strength of a club, by comparing the wage budget in German football, and then you can see if he does well or not. And the respect of that structure really is sacrosanct, and same goes for the bonus system, which you know, when I started in German football, it was rather 60-40, so 60% fixed payments and 40% bonuses. Now it's maybe 75-25, but still bonuses have a different meaning than in other top leagues. I think in England it plays a very little role if you compare the amount of bonuses to the monthly payments, and France, Italy, and Spain is almost no meaning the bonus. But in Germany, still very important because it's paid out only if you play. So the point per appearance or per point won, and it's quite a particularity. So, and allows the clubs to still to keep some power over the players, so that they have incentives to keep going and to win every match. And also particularity maybe is, and again, Gregor might disagree here, but I would say that in Germany, compared to other countries, the the agent fees are still quite reasonable. They're quite reasonable. They are published as well as in any other league, but they are really in the most of the cases, between 8 and 10%. Of course, the exceptions, there are no exceptions to the rule, of course, or there are always exceptions to the rule, but that is the case, and that's why the focus shifts in Germany more and more from the commissions to participation. So an agent will ask you rather for having 10% in a sell-on than 12% commission maybe, and that also comes with this new trend of value creation. Value creation, also a new trend, and because we buy.
Yeah, I'll just bring Gregor back in there. Gregor, do you share Ilja's sentiments there, that in terms of commission rates reasonable, or do you think they've gone too far in Germany?
No, I think that actually I do agree with Ilja that the commission rates in Germany are reasonable. If you look at the average being paid 10% from the gross annual salary, and usually around 8 to 10% of the bonuses. So I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
Thanks, Gregor. So just coming back to the agents, Ilja, tell us about how German agents operate with clubs. What's your typical German agent? How would he get in touch with you? And how does that differ to perhaps the experiences that you've had with agents from other parts of the world?
Well, first of all, everything is very structured, as very open-minded. The clubs are actually open to new contacts. See that more and more. Maybe it was different in the past, but I have to say that the agents in the German market, they try to position themselves as good stakeholders in this industry, and they even launch media initiatives, to brand themselves in interviews, that they want to support the ecosystem, that they want to create value, they want to create win-win situations. And I think that's actually the case. They see themselves as supporting the clubs to create even more money for themselves, but also for the clubs, because still, I think in Germany you can apply the saying that transfers finance clubs, not investors. And so they want to play a role in that. And when you say how do you deal with agents, unfortunately the market gets smaller, because there are the big players, they are on acquisition tours. They buy up the small agencies as they prepare themselves for the market entry of even bigger players from the US. So you have you deal more and more with monopolists, which cannot be an advantage for the clubs, but there's still to you out there, there's untapped potential, because the internationalization is just arriving in German football.
Sure.
And that is untapped potential, especially language skills. Most agencies in Germany, they lack the language skills, so they try to bring in former players speaking French or Portuguese or whatever. So it's a chance. They look for cooperations with agents abroad there, because that helps them really to understand markets. And as you heard, there's very few countries providing players, so help is needed.
And Ilja, what about, how did you view this summer's transfer activity right across the Bundesliga, and also what are your thoughts for what's January going to look like in this current climate?
The German clubs traditionally spend low, that's not a surprise that they didn't want to splash out, and they were hesitating. But I think that also due to this conservative approach and the budget discipline, and you have to perform well financially, economically, you're responsible towards your members. And I said, there's no investor, will save you if you do silly things. So, but that has always been the case, and I think we'll have a rather normal market soon, because it can't go, it won't drop much, but it will not go up much higher after the pandemic anyway.
And Ilja, is January a traditionally quiet month in the German transfer market?
I think what drives everybody mad in Germany is this, this English thing with the dealing on the last day, in the last hours, and
Deadline day. Yeah.
We love it. We love
yeah.
that. We love deadline day.
Yeah, I see, but it's it's so anti, to the values. You want to be prepared. You want to have everything finished before you want to be organized. And deadline day, the last hours are just chaotic. So, yes, there are deals, but they are done. The sooner the better. You get praised for doing a deal 3 weeks before deadline day, whereas in England it's 3 minutes before.
Yeah. Ilja, deadline day is bigger than Christmas Day.
No,
that's the reality.
Can you see it being quiet though, Ilja, in January? Do you think it'll be quiet?
Maybe because there are just 13 games before the break. Oh, there's no break, but before January, so less games. So I think the clubs might hesitate a bit, make changes.
Ilja, obviously, one of the reasons why we wanted to come to Germany in terms of doing this talk first is from an English perspective. We've seen some real successes of young English talent going over to Germany. Everybody knows about Sancho, but now we're seeing Bellingham do well at Dortmund as well. Do you see these as being a sort of, just sort of two special players, or do you think we'll see more young English talent playing in Germany?
Well, I think all German clubs, they are looking for opportunities in the market, and they just don't have that wide perspective yet. Very few markets, but they realize that when English talent development has progressed massively over the last couple of years. The performance of the youth national teams are a proof of that. But they are not playing because the Premier League, the expectations are so high, and you have all these superstars and large squads. So great talents, they are not getting playing time. And these days, when you want to progress, the statistics is what matters. With all the Moneyball scouting and data-driven scouting, you need the data. So they try this trend was started, and there are many Bundesliga clubs. I'm not speaking about the biggest ones, but they say one of our main scouting areas is the reserve Premier League. They do well. They progress. They get playing time. They raise their market value, and they have a great home market. Yeah, Sancho, might be bought back for a 3-digit million transfer fee. Because there are clubs able to pay this, so it's I think it's a win-win-win situation. But it's just strange that now English clubs are chasing German talents. Maybe we can create a perpetuum mobile. We give the talents to England, they give our talents, and we raise the value of all the players involved. That would be great.
Fantastic. Excellent. Thank you very much, Ilja. I want to leave plenty of time for questions because we've got lots of questions to come through. So we'll kind of open it out to everybody and indeed the people tuning in now. I want to start off from a question from Guy Branston, who's the loan manager at Leicester City Football Club. Guy asks, we spoke around support around the players that you sign. Could you explain in more detail around the support that you give them on a daily basis? He says, because in the UK there is a system of like human resources, player liaison. They've obviously got their agents, coaches. Is it something similar, or does the player have complete independence and they have to make their own mistakes in order to learn?
Well, mainly there's a department called team management as well, and supporting staff. If you, for finding the right apartment and get the car and just these basic things. But we, especially with the player from Arsenal, we noticed that he came from a world which is maybe unique. Only the elite clubs might have this, but everything was taken care of, and he had dozens of people around him. Talking to him, coaching him in every aspect, from fitness to whatever, psychology and media communication, whatever, social media. and the guy struggled. He was on his own, and he was lost. He was totally lost. Welcome to the real world, But it made him a better player, I think, because he struggled also on the pitch. But then he fought hard. He said, "No, I don't want to go back," and had a super performance, leading to interest from clubs across Europe. Even big clubs. Champions League clubs, and so I think that's why they come to Germany. It's a bit harder, it's more, a bit more handmade, I would say, than maybe in the Premier League, where it's you can do whatever you want because money has no limitations.
Yeah, I just want to bring Gregor back in again. Gregor, quite a few questions relating to people asking, is there a homegrown quota in German football? Is there a requirement for German clubs to have a number of German born players in their squads, or?
No, not in the top leagues, no.
No. And there's another question in and around the length of contracts that clubs are able to give younger players. Is there any specificity about that to Germany?
Well, that's a very interesting question, a very good question. Yes, there are, from a civil law point of view, the maximum length of a contract that you can have without an ordinary termination clause in it is 5 years. That's the maximum you can have. Now, and as far as younger players are concerned, the German FA has a ruling saying that if it's a minor, it can only be 3 years. There's a big controversial in Germany because a lot of clubs do 3+2. They will do 3 years contract and then 2 years option clauses for both parties, because unilateral option clauses in Germany are illegal, have been struck down by the courts many, many times. Well, the discussion that we always have with the German FA is, we say, well, it says in your rules 3 years. 3 years plus 2 makes 5 with my mathematical abilities. And so you're violating your own rules. The German FA says, well, yeah, but it's 3 years and the 2 years don't count. So that is a very good question, and it's up for grasp. Unfortunately, I have not yet been able to take that to court. I would love to take that to court, because I think that Germany lies in its own pocket. They're violating their own rules, and it should only be for if you are a minor, 3 years with no option.
Okay, thank you for that. Ilya, another question that's come through is do you think this 50+1 rule will eventually be eroded? That'll of course open up German clubs to more investment, and then the potential of rising wages as well, which will of course make the country perhaps a bit more attractive to the top players. Do you see that happening?
Well, it could be, yes, it could be, I think, but it then would be replaced by domestic financial fair play rules, because I think the German public is open for external investors, but they don't want guys outspending and then buying their way up. That wouldn't fit culturally. But we can see that there's the open-mindedness for rational, for strategic investors, and there's massive interest currently, particularly from the US, for German football assets. I can say that very well, because we are ourselves looking for a strategic partner and have a structured search going on. And we noticed that the German market probably will be the next big thing. The Corona changes a lot. France, Italy, Spain, they are struggling. The football ecosystem is struggling. The TV partners are struggling. The economy, well, England is a case for itself apart. It's very difficult to come in because not so many clubs are available. But German-speaking countries are now in the focus. And I think it also said this approach was changed during the pandemic, really, because the investors want stability, and they have overlooked, I think, these markets because of the 50+1 rule. But
yeah,
I think a strategic partner will have no problem developing that asset and reap the fruits from his investment, even with having no full control, because he wants the strategic development. He doesn't want to coach the team and or be the owner like we see it in English football these days. I think German football looks for different kind of investors staying in the background, and everything else will just not work because it will be a cultural clash with the German history of member clubs.
Tony, I want to give you an opportunity to I know you've got some questions perhaps from some of the audience members as well. If you want to ask a question.
Yeah, I suppose it's to Gregor and to sort of Ilja. So if I'm an agent, obviously I'm registered here in England. I want to move a player, say to the second Bundesliga. Do I need to work with a German company, or is it just a good idea to get a lawyer on board to make sure? Because obviously we went through some of the pitfalls there with Gregor. What's my best route of approach?
Ilja?
Yeah, in my opinion, the direct contact with clubs is welcomed and is refreshing. Especially the open-minded clubs in Bundesliga, second Bundesliga, they are looking for that, because to also create a bit of competition to the domestic system where the prices are just inflated, because everybody hunts the same players because has no reach out beyond the borders. So and for the legal part, yes, many foreign agents, they have partner agencies, or they can always refer to Gregor. But but I think everything is so correct that it's not even a big issue. What do you think, Gregor?
Well, yeah. Thanks, Ilja. That worked well, referring to that question to you, because I would have been a little bit biased to say, well, go with a lawyer. From a legal point of view, you don't need another agent. You can simply conduct business by yourself. And the good news for everybody here from the United Kingdom is that we won't stop January 1st. So even if the United Kingdom is no longer a member of the European Union, you will be able to conduct business by yourself in Germany. And I agree with Ilja, do build up your relationships for yourself, because as Ilja pointed out, times are changing in Germany a little bit, and younger coaches, younger sporting directors are coming in that have a little bit different focus than the old guard. So I would recommend do it by yourself. And as we have seen, and in as far as the legal situation is concerned, yes, if you need assistance, go turn to a lawyer rather than a fellow agent.
Cool, thank you.
Excellent. I want to bring Roberto back in now. Roberto, I'm really keen for you to just give your reflections really on what you've heard today, and then I think really from a sort of macro perspective, give your thoughts on how you perceive agents from individual countries. Really, how well do they understand the operations and legalities of operating in other countries, and why it's important that things like this and information sharing increases?
Yeah, well, thank you, Ryan. First of all, thank you to Ilja, Eduardo, and of course also to Gregor. It's I think it's very valuable, and from the reactions that I was receiving here online and WhatsApp messages that I was receiving from participants, I think it was very, very helpful. And I think it also really reflects the necessity for having these hands-on practical approaches to doing business in Germany, and then obviously in different countries. Well, Ryan, I think it's very relevant and very necessary and very helpful, because we face this reality that every country has a different system. And doing also consultancy and legal consultancy for agents, I realize that it's impossible for one single agent to have knowledge of all the different markets. So I'm 100% sure that there are people now in the audience that maybe for the first time realize that when doing business in Germany, they have to be careful for some issues albeit in relation to employment contracts or collaboration agreements or representation agreements between players and agents. So I think that's very helpful. So this is what was the objective of EFA. This was what is the objective of a collaboration with yourself and Tony from the Football Transfer Forum. And yeah, I really look forward to continue for the next countries. What can I say more? It really supports the objective of EFA. I think we are bringing transparency and professionalism in doing business in the international football industry, and this really serves a purpose. So I'm really very happy.
Very good. Roberto, I can't have you on here and not ask you about your reaction to the European Super League that was muted yesterday. What's your initial thoughts about it? It's obviously FIFA backed. You're obviously dealing a lot with FIFA at the moment. What are the motivations? What are the impacts? What do you think the European Football Agents Association's stance will be on it?
In what sense? In the European Super League, you mean?
Yeah, so obviously the notion that the top clubs from the sort of big 5, 6 leagues are going to form this this breakaway competition that's separate to UEFA, that's a FIFA-backed competition, that's Gregor that's backed by, I think, a £4.6 billion investment from a hedge fund in the States.
Well, I have to say, Ryan, I really need to think about it a bit longer to really have a comprehensive idea. But I'm always struggling when I think about these breakaway leagues on the one hand, because I don't have a fixed idea about it, and my background is in academia, so I tend to get very academic about it and to think about it in a larger context. On the one hand, I think it's fascinating and interesting that FIFA would back such a super league. I think will create a lot of difficulties between FIFA and UEFA, obviously. I'm not sure if that is something that we want at this moment, especially not in these COVID times, when I think we need to have some stabilization instead of coming up with these all new kind of competitions. On the other hand, is football so specific that we should stick to a product that encompasses all the football clubs, or do we have to follow more like a US kind of system where we really focus on entertainment and get the best clubs together and to create to create a competition that's fully backed only by the idea of the maximizing the entertainment? I'm not sure what I think about it. For now, I would say, while we're still playing without any audience and while we have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, because these crazy measures are, becoming more and more strict everywhere, I would say just stick to what we know, and maybe in a year or two think about a European Super League. So
yeah, I would concur with that. Ilja, what's the reaction been of German clubs, and what's the reaction of yourself?
Well, personally, I'm a football romantic, and before we were all together. Now it's ripped apart more and more, the system, and I think me and others have predicted it a long time ago. It's the Americanization of European football. You will have a major leagues or a major league, and you have the minor leagues, and it seems to be a development. Seems to be unstoppable. It comes closer and closer. The ideas are raised again and again, and maybe the virus is accelerating everything. That one day we'll have this major league and the basketball EuroLeague system, and then we have the as I said, the Americanization of European football.
Gregor, do you think agents will be excited by this? That's a big amount of money that's being put up by these American hedge funds in order to potentially propel this. What do you think the likelihood is of it happening, and do you think it would be good for agents as part of that?
Well, from my point of view, I would not be too happy about it if I would be an agent and not one of the super agents. Because what we will see in a European Super League is that it will be limited to very few clubs. And it will be geared like an American Major League. And probably these clubs will only deal with certain types of agents or big agents. So if you're a smaller agent company, that's something that you don't want to see necessarily. But it is, as Ilja pointed out, it is the decision that we all have to make. Do we want more football commerce, the American way, or do we want to stick with football culture? And the problem that I foresee is, at least in Germany and in England, it is the same. Football was played in the Middle Ages, and professional leagues were introduced in the 19th century. So football is embedded in our culture, in the English culture, in the German culture, and that's what makes the game. You know, the fact that we have clubs that have been there for a long, long time. And what we don't like in Germany, and I'm sure you don't like it in England, is we don't like St. Louis to move from LA to St. Louis and the Raiders to move from Oakland to Las Vegas. It's something that we don't want to see. But we're heading toward that direction. But from my point of view, we need to consider that football is based on culture, and football needs that background. The Americans have the collegial sporting system where they can draw their talents from. We don't have that in Europe. So I'm very, very skeptical when it comes to the European Super League, because I would rather see Dortmund play Bochum than Dortmund play Barcelona.
I'm sure Ilja would as well.
Soon.
Yeah, soon. Guys, time is coming to an end. Before I pass over to Tony to talk about the next event, I just want to say how enjoyable I found that, and I want to thank Ilja, Gregor, Roberto, and Eduardo for your fantastic input. I've certainly learned a lot over the past couple of weeks putting this together about operating in Germany. And you know, from a sort of English football cap on, I hope that cooperation between our two nations can increase. And it's been a pleasure to see some of our young players do so well over there. So thank you very much for your input, guys. And also thank you to everybody that's come on the webinar today. And thanks for everybody that's asked questions. Just to reiterate, tomorrow we'll be sending you out a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and some more detailed information from Eduardo as well. But Tony, this is just the start of this journey in terms of these events. Yeah. You want to talk to us about the next stop?
I think Roberto summed it up really nicely, where he said, you know, how difficult is it as an independent agent to operate in a number of countries? You know, you can't know every country that well. So the next webinar, we're doing business in Spain. So if you're interested in trying to do deals in Spain, we're moving to that country next. That's going to be on Thursday, the 22nd of November. FIFA brought out some interesting figures from the last transfer window. And no surprise, the biggest spenders on international transfers were England and the Premier League in particular. But the country who brought the most money in incoming transfers, so fees brought in was Spanish clubs. So they're very good at selling their players into other markets, and also they're very good. You know, just like the German coaches, there's some excellent coaches now coming out of Spain. So I think that's going to be a really interesting webinar in about a month's time. Everybody who's been on this, thanks so much for joining in. You'll receive a message regarding the doing business in Spain, and you know, I look forward to doing a few more of these. I've really enjoyed it, and you know, I've learned a lot as well. I feel like I've been an attendee because I've learned a lot this morning about the German market. So thanks, guys, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.